So welcome everybody. If you're new here, it's a question and answer with Bindaji on general Advaita Vedanta questions. And just raise your hand at any level and come up and talk about what you'd like to with Bindaji.
So Bindaji, one question is, I am reading a book called Yoga Vasishtam. First of all, I'm not sure how authentic that is. Typically, it is trying to explain the concept of Punarjanma slightly differently. Typically what I would understand is in Vyavaharika Satya, though Atma is everywhere, the Sukshma Sharira, like at the point of death, the Sukshma Sharira leaves the body and enters something else. But that text is telling it's like when somebody dies, based on all the vasanas that he has collected, just like a dream appears, a new world is created in a dream. At the time of death, a new universe literally is created based on all the experiences and custom made for that particular person who has died. So how to understand this?
Well, see, the prakriya or the methodology of Yoga Vasishta is slightly different. Initially, those who are reading it may not be able to grasp from which point they should approach that. But the thing is that what it says is just like we are projecting our dream, we are projecting our waking. The Punarjanma is also a projection of that same way only. Now, Punarjanma is only if you are considering there is a rebirth possible and things like that. But in Advaita, if you are coming to Kevala Advaita, there is nothing other than Atma or Brahman. And therefore, everything what is happening is within that Brahman only, which is consciousness in nature. So in consciousness, whatever appears is an experience because consciousness is the reason why you are having experience. So that is the reason why the Yoga Vasishta also is saying that even Punarjanma is an experience similar to your waking and dream, but you are creating a new world, a new waking, and a new dream world according to that.
Okay. But it also says that when a person dies, a new universe is getting created, a dream world. But it is possible to travel between. Now, apparently, if a person once again dies in that universe, he will create another Chota universe, and the previous universe still exists, and they can travel between universes through some yoga or something. Is it too fantastic, or is it some kind of truth to it?
Yeah, it is too fantastic. It is a fantasy only. But what you have to grasp is that, like how we are shifting between dream world and the waking world. The waking world remains even when we go to the dream world. We are in our fantasy, we create a dream world. And then when we are fed up of it, we come back to the waking world again. It is virtually replicating that aspect only there.
Okay. As a general thing, how seriously should I take it? It looks like totally.
It's a fantasy only.
Okay.
There are intermingled Advaitic aspects discussed in between the stories. The stories per se itself is not real. They are all made in the, fantasy. But through that, Yogi Vasishta is also giving Advaita philosophy. So that is more important rather than the story itself.
Okay. Because time and again I'm asking the same question, but I'm not getting an answer, Bindoji. It's like my question was in dream. Okay, if dream state and waking state is similar, the people in the dream, okay, they are also having just like you and me, right? In waking state, there is some entity called Bindoji who is listening to what, though it is temporary, there is somebody who is listening to what I'm telling. But in dream, okay, if there is some person like that, when I wake up, what happens to that entity? Who was listening to what I was telling in the dream? Because apparently that world no longer exists. Do they disappear or what is happening?
No, see, the thing is that it is creation of the mind. Here you are feeling a longer period because you are not able to get out of this waking to a state of awareness, which is your true nature. So when you shift yourself, or when you are able to awake yourself into that awareness, then only you will be able to see this waking also similar to your dream. Because then what happens, you will not ask the question what happened to the people in the waking. Only the difference is that you can come back to this waking world, whereas you can't go back to the dream world. This is what is indicated in the story of the Yoga Vasishtha. So that is what is called Para Jagrat. It is not a Jagrat, the waking world, but it is at a superlative realm where you are in the waking, but at the same time, the waking appears unreal to you. That is the Para Jagrat.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Binduji.
Venkat, did you have anything maybe?
I had when started going through the Prashna Upanishad, right? I started going through Upanishads only last 4 months after guidance from Binduji. The series it has to be dealt with. Binduji, after coming to this Upanishad, there's a lot of context coming from the other portions of the Atharva Veda. This is Prashna Upanishad from Atharva Veda, right, Binduji?
Yes.
So this Upanishads do refer back on the prior practices and bring that context into this. Unless some context is there, it's difficult to understand the entire body of the Upanishad. That's the one observation, Binduji. Maybe this may amplify when we start going through the other Upanishads also. That is, is that a limitation? How do you deal with this? Some of this, that is one ask.
See, there is no dependency on the context to what is being discussed in the Upanishads. That is why they are treated as standalone treatises or texts which can be dealt without referring to the Veda. Normally in the Parampara, this is taught along with the Vedas. What happened in the practice was that people lost importance to these aspects and they were more worried about the karma phalas of the Vedas. And that is why the Vedas became very important and the people started following the karma kanda of the Vedas, and giving no importance to the jnana kanda, even upasana kanda for that matter. But the Upanishad is not at all depending upon the Vedas for the upasana or the what you call the karma kanda. Even though upasana is intermingled in the Upanishad, most of the Upanishads you will find that there is a part of upasana which is given. This is for not as a context from the Veda from which it is derived at, but it is more for the Madhyamadhikari, the middle intellect people, for getting the chitta shuddhi or practicing their mental sharpness by upasana, and then they can study this jnana kanda. That is how it is normally prescribed in the parampara.
Yes, Binduji, that Agni Vidya and all come, no? That is where that Gruhyadni, there are some Agni types, all that is referring to the prior practices. That was the reason I was asking.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And yeah. And this Mahanarayana Upanishad that I was checking, because, different, the same Narayana Upanishad available in Yajurveda and same Narayana Upanishad available, in the Atharvana Veda, but entirely different. that the way the Mahanarad Upanishad starts from is Ambasya Pare, that bonus semante, like that. I think it starts from that. While Mahanarad, the Narayana Upanishad and the Prashna Upanishad start from Atha Purusho Havai Narayana Kamayuta Prajasrujayati. Narayana Prano Jayate. Basically, there is a more centering on the prana. The prana, that Vayu Jyoti Rapa Prithvi Vishwasya Dharini. Like that, it takes off. And one interesting thing I found in this, Atharvana Veda, Narayana Upanishad, is Brahmanyo Devaki Putro Brahmanyo Madhusudanam. That means the Mahabharata is over. After that is that, after that this particular Veda itself has come. That is interesting because the Devaki Putro Madhusudana is called out in the Narayana Upanishad in Atharvana Veda. There is some history look like where the Prana Vidya, Yoga Shastra, all that came after Rig Veda and Yajur Veda, and then more materialized in the Atharvana Veda, and where the Krishna gave that Yogeshwara and Jnaneshwara, the both dimension emerged, and here the Prana Vidya further solidified in the Atharvana Veda. Some sequence, I'm just making a guess, Binduji.
It is not like that, Venkat. What we have to understand is that other than Advaita, if you are going into these type of enquiries or, what you call timeline, then you have to look from the creation point of view. And in the creation point of view, the cycle repeats after every 4 yugas. So what happens is that this reference of Devaki Putra Madhusudana is not referring to the Devaki Putra Madhusudana of the current Kalpa. He is referring to the Devaki Putra Madhusudana of the previous Kalpa, because the Veda itself has come again, Nishwasa, that as issued, given by Lord at the time of creation. So what happens is that the Vedas were given, and then that the Vedas were followed by the, 4 jati, 4 varnas. Like that it is, you have to take. If you ask a Sampradaya or traditional person, he will say this Devaki Putra Madhusudana is not being referred to the Devaki Putra Madhusudana of Mahabharata of our Kalpa. It is being referred to the previous Kalpa. So that is what they will be saying. So I had heard this, and we had the same question being asked in our class. So our teacher told that it is being referred to the previous Kalpa, Devaki. And the previous Kalpa, Devaki is Putra Madhusudana. The whole thing is repeatedly being, enacted by God Lord in the form of 4 yugas. Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga, and then again Satya Yuga starts again after the Mahapralaya. That is where Brahmaji goes for a sleep after 1 day's, 1 day's activity, and that is called the Brahma Nidra. And then when he wakes up, he starts creating Satya Yuga again. So like that, his day starts with Satya Yuga and ends with Kali Yuga. Then he goes to sleep. That is when the Mahapralaya takes place. That is how in the Puranas it is mentioned.
Yes, Pandaji, that Guru Shishya Parampara, that is where this critical questions are lost. Maybe I think this helps, Binduji.
Most of these type of doubts, 1 minute, Patrick. Most of these types of questions can come, and that can be answered only if you get a tutelage from a Guru Shishya Parampara in the Sampradaya. Otherwise, we don't get a time to study the entire 4 Vedas and their Upavedas and all the Ashtangas. So that is why it is better to learn Upanishads from a Sampradaya Guru. And what I am doing here is what I have studied from my guru. I am just translating into English and sharing it with you all. I'm not into the tradition Sampradaya because I am a Kevala Advaiti. So for me, there is no tradition, no Sampradaya, nothing. Etra Veda Aveda Bhavati. So that is my stance. So I don't refer to the Vedas or these type of stories in the Vedas, their timeline, their relationship between the words and all. But my words, my interesting aspect on all the Upanishad is where the Tattva is being referred to. The Vakyas which are leading to the truth. That is what I am more interested. Yes, Patrick.
When I came into the room, Raul was talking to you about Vashistha. So, and then could you just summarize what he was asking? Because I thought it was about lokas, and then, but you're not denying lokas, right? Or I'm sorry, not denying lokas and yugas, for example.
Yeah, what Rahul asked was, he was referring to a story in the Yoga Vasishta where, after this birth, the vasanas and the subtle body goes for another birth and creates the world, universe for enjoyment. And then there also he dies and he goes to another world, but then he can transmigrate between the previous worlds and the current world. Is what he was asking, whether it is a fantasy or whether it is to be taken as with any importance or like that he was asking. So that is where my answer was I was telling him that, it is a fantasy only. It is only referring here, we have to take this is between the dream and the waking. And the waking to para-waking, para-jagrat, where, the waking becomes an unreal world. Then you can travel between all the three worlds at your own whims and fancies. And you will know that all the three are equally unreal. What is real is your own self. That is the consciousness, is the only reality, where everything else is dependent upon that.
And what about yugas and so what about yugas, for example?
It is all part of that, in what is inside that story.
Okay, but you're not denying the dependent reality of those stories, and that the yuga exists, but in the story.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
But when the story is unreal, the dependency also is unreal.
Yeah, but this conversation's unreal then.
Yeah, conversation is unreal from what level?
Yeah,
not in this level.
No.
In this level, it is as real as our dream.
Right.
Whether you call it as a dream or waking doesn't make a difference. What becomes unreal, it becomes unreal only when you are established in that truth and staying in that truth. When you look back into these experiences, that is when this becomes unreal.
The Saptarishis talked about the yugas, right?
No, it is after that.
Okay.
No, they never mentioned anything about it.
Okay.
This started with Patanjali, actually speaking.
Okay. Okay, Bindu, thank you.
Namaste, Benji. Voice loud and clear? Yeah. So my question may be slightly longer one, but it's regarding reflected consciousness. So actually the reflected consciousness, Chidabhasa. So basically, the way I see it, there are two modes of considering that reflected consciousness. On the one hand, we have this Ghatakasha, Mahakasha, that is spot space and the full space. Then on the other hand, we have this sun and we have pots of water which reflect the sun. Now, in the first case, it is actually full consciousness getting restricted by something from the pot. But in the second case, it's actually a false entity which is getting created. Because when the reflecting medium goes away, that reflected sunlight also goes away. So how do we consider this consciousness?
Yeah. See, each one is a different example for the purpose of conveying certain aspect. You cannot compare between two examples because the examples have got their own limitations. So, if you are looking at the Gadakasha and Mahakasha, the pot space and the outer space, the difference is created by the onlooker, due to the presence of the pot. But he, for the time being, forgets that the pot also needs space for its own existence. It can't exist, it is not an existent thing if you say that the pot doesn't need space. So the inside space, the body of the pot, and the outside space is all in one Akash only, one one space. There is no demarcation possible. But it is a virtual demarcation which is being created by one person who is seeing. Now, with the other example is the reflected consciousness in different pots of water, the sun getting reflected. There, the example is that Ekaha Suryaha, the truth is only one, but it is appearing as multiple because of these adjuncts which we have as, objects. So the objects are now the reflected light, and the objects are depend upon the awareness or the consciousness for their existence. If the awareness is not there or consciousness is not there, the object is not an object for knowing, experiencing. So the reflection is only to show that it can be any number of reflections, but it will be always dependent upon the one truth or one reality, or the Mahakasha. You can have n number of pots dividing that space into n number of pots, but that doesn't diminish the total space or the space occupied by the pots. So in both the cases, some similarity is there, but the majority of the purpose of these two examples are for totally different purposes. One is to show that the demarcation is unreal, whereas in the other one it is that it is the same awareness which is becoming the cause for knowing multiple objects. That is how you have to understand that.
Okay. I think I got it. But this is so like a follow-up thing, because like a lot of these guided meditation sessions with various teachers, right? They say focus on your awareness currently, see that it has no boundaries. Those kind of adjectives are used for that consciousness. But from what I believe in, that consciousness which we have right now, by which I'm aware right now, that is still the reflected consciousness. So
yes.
The confusion for me is whether should I consider that as just a one, like the Gadakasha example, it's a small segment of the consciousness is currently falsely restricted, or should I consider it as something which is to be done away with, because if the mind disappears, that consciousness also disappears, and something else comes into play there. In context of meditation, how do I approach it?
I would rather recommend you, if you can, read the 4th chapter of Brihadaranya, where the dialogue between Yajnavalkya and Janaka is taking place. Vitnyadaram are kena vijanyat is a question which is being asked by Yajnavalkya to Janaka. Who is how can the witness itself or know itself? The knower, how can know itself? Because then it has to be two separate, the subject and object. The knowing needs a object, but the knower can never be objective. Knower can never objectify himself as an object. He is always the subject. That is why the question is asked. Vitnyadara means the knower. Are kena vijaniyat, by whom can he get known? He himself has to be knowing himself. Otherwise, there is no other way to know. Anything else is an object. But to know yourself, you have to not look at the awareness. There you are again objectifying the awareness. You can never objectify yourself. So that is a problem in the meditation when you say the objectifying the awareness. That is the why the neti process is being taken. And then the final stage is that even the one who is saying neti is dropping himself, because I am no more, there is nothing more left to say neti, not this. So I am not even the person who is saying not this, because there is nothing else is available. So there is no doership also in me. So I am the awareness in which I was doing all these things. That is the way in which it finally culminates. That is the method in which one should more approach this.
Okay, I think the last one, I think, clarified things.
Yeah.
Is it better?
Yes.
Sorry, yeah. No, I think Binderji, what you said about neti, I think that makes sense. So basically, like, yeah, meaning even though, for example, even if, let's say, if I say I'm aware of, no, okay, anyway, yeah. I'll reflect on that a little bit more. Thank you, Binderji.
Thank you.
Yeah, anyone on the speaker panel who would like to bring more forward, and anyone in the audience who would like to come up and discuss or ask Binderji a question, that's what we're here for. So anyone's welcome. Raise your hand.
Okay, so maybe I can go for another question. Binderji, I am trying to understand the difference between among the antakaranas, right? Manas and buddhi. I'm a little confused. What is the exact difference between manas and buddhi?
Both are of the same faculty. The buddhi or the intellect is into analysis and analytical nature. It is logic-based activity of the mind itself. But the manaha is referred as the mind, but mind is referred as a overall internal equipment also. But when you are saying difference between the mind and the intellect, the mind is the seat of emotions, feelings and thoughts. Whereas intellect is analytical, logical and, investigative in nature. So these are the two aspects of the mind itself. And then there is a third aspect which is called the ego. That is also of the mind. The ego is basically the egocentric activities, egocentric thoughts and everything which is depending upon the individuality. Even the individuality is held by the ego, that I am separate from the rest of the world. And then the fourth aspect of the mind itself, where the tendencies and memories and, desires are stored. That is called the chitta. So that becomes the fourth aspect of the antakarana, or in the instrument of this thing. All four put together is also referred as mind or manaha in the Shastra. So unless you know Sanskrit very well, when the mind is used, what aspect of the mind is being referred to there can confuse people. That is why there are common words, like for example the word chitta. Chit also is there another word. Chit is different from chitta. Chit is basically to refer to Chaitanya or the consciousness or awareness. Whereas chitta is the seat of tendencies, memories, desires, etc. Even subconscious mind. Mayur, do you have a question?
Yes, Binduji. Actually, thank you. I don't know whether I would be able to put it in the right words, but Brahma is complete, it's subtle, and it's nirguna. that means there are no gunas, then why all this mithya comes into the picture itself, whether we know it at the final stage that it is mithya or it was not there at all, but still whatever we experience and whatever we are going through, it's even though it is why it is even happening, why that all those things, even like we take the example of the rope and snake, and we know that that it is not a snake, it's a rope only, but rope itself will never have this kind of confusion that whether it's a snake or not. And if the Brahman only exists, why even we need to go through all this process and all this chaos? Yeah.
Now your example itself is very clear. Why did the snake appear in the first place? Is because the nature of the snake, which is reality, in reality, the rope was forgotten or not known. When you don't know that it is a rope, then there is a tendency or a possibility that you see a rope in that place. Same is the case when we say Brahman and Mithya. When we do not know that everything is nothing but consciousness or awareness or Satchidananda, that absence of that knowledge is what is called avidya, or avidya is in another word is called mithya. Mithya is, avidya is vidya abhava, or absence of what you call the right knowledge. The absence of the right knowledge is leading us to the absence of that knowledge has got two aspects. One is it conceals the nature of the object, the reality of the object, and then on that it projects something else. This is what is called avarana and vikshepa in Sanskrit. Everything what we are experiencing is nothing but Brahman. And when we do not know it is Brahman, we feel that it is different from Brahman, and then we call it as by names and forms. And these names and forms then create the world. So this habit of projecting name and form onto Brahman is what is called avidya or mithya. So same is the case when you say snake and rope. So if you can understand this as the fundamental problem what we are facing, but the solution for that is the only one is that we should know what is really Brahman, and then that Brahman is what is we experiencing in the world as objects. The objects per se has nothing other than name and form, but their fundamental reality is nothing but consciousness or awareness. If there is no consciousness or awareness in any object, that object doesn't exist. A non-existent object can never give right to experience. But an appearance can give rise to experience when you do not know the object. That is what happened in the case of rope and snake. Same way, when we do not know the nature of Brahman as objects with having name and form, for us the name and form becomes a reality, not the nature of the object which is Brahman or consciousness or awareness. Without awareness, we don't even know that the object exists or not. But we think that the object has got independent existence because of the name and form. And that is the reason why we are having the problem in resolving the multitude and the diversity in the world. Because we see only the superficial names and forms. We don't see the fundamental nature of every object. the one who can see the fundamental nature of every object, for him, tatra ko moha ka shoka ekatvam anupashyata. For him, where is the shoka and moha? There is neither the sorrow nor the desires. He sees the reality in everything. That is what the Upanishad says.
Okay, thank you. But still, one more doubt in that. Like my example of rope and snake. I was there to observe it like a witness. That's why I was a third person over there. That's why even this first problem came into the picture, whether it is a snake or rope. But if only rope exists, there would not be a question whether there is a snake or rope. Like if only Brahman exists, then this avidya or these things, in fact, they should not at all come into the picture in any way. So, like, I struggle with that. And I understand one thing that, yes, if I know that, if I come to understand that knowledge or gyan, that I am the Brahman, at that time maybe this question will dissolve. But maybe it is beyond my intellectual capacity, or maybe that's why I cannot grasp it, this basic question. Like, there should be at least some third entity which is observing that rope and snake, and that's why that even example exists. Otherwise, if the only rope is in existence, there will not be any kind of such quarrel, right?
You're absolutely right. There is no doubt that only if the rope exists, there will not be a problem. Here, the third party is you are the third party who is seeing the rope and the snake. In the normal life, you are still there. You don't know who is or what is your real nature. You are assuming you are a human being with sense organs, and sense organs are projecting you the world. You do not know your nature, therefore you do not know the nature of the objects world outside also. Because only dependency for you is what the sense organs are feeding to your mind. And sense organ can feed only the name and form and the adjectives of the objects. So you are really living in a realm of name, form and adjectives depending upon your sense organs and the mind. Neither do you realize your true nature, nor are you able to realize the true nature of the object. Therefore, what happens? Both you are dependent upon the object is dependent on you. But the substratum for both being the same, or the reality of both being the same, that when it is not perceived or understood, what happens is that the dichotomy exists. And then the dichotomy can never be resolved unless you bring down to the fundamental substratum. It is that two pots are having space in it. So when the pots are being seen separately, the space is seen separately in the two pots. But there is no difference between the space in the pot 1A and pot B. You can move around the pots, but you cannot move around the space inside that. You are not moving the space inside. Actually, you are only moving the pot inside. Same way, in the world, the objects with the name and form move around in consciousness. You are also consciousness who is knowing that you are also moving around, but you are thinking you are the physical body. So that is why you are not able to resolve this equation. So only when you know your true nature, that you are nothing but awareness, pure awareness, and in awareness only everything exists. And what exists is nothing but awareness, but you transact it with a name and form. That is not a problem. As long as you know that fundamental reality is awareness, the transaction can continue without any problem, because you know the reality of the object is nothing but awareness. That is how it has to be resolved.
Okay. Thank you so much, Binduji. Like, I would say my last words, like, I understand it, and it's best thing to do that, even though these questions bother, let's keep them aside, ignoring them, and I should focus on that I to get to know that knowledge. Then I guess there wouldn't be any questions. So better to ignore
That,
these questions.
that's right. That's right. First, we should know ourselves.
Binduji, namaste.
Namaste.
Binduji, I had this question that it was explained in that the last session that during the dream, all experiences the God and the mind and the soul experiences the glory, and whatever has been projected during the day, whatever has been seen or felt like, all that is projected in the dream again. So I had this question that how about the prophetic dreams?
Prophetic dreams are nothing but you correlate between two events. There is nothing prophecy about it. You may dream something, the same thing can happen later. The dream is not the cause for it because it's in a different space-time causation in the dream world. But what happens in the time-space causation in our day-to-day life is in a different phenomenon altogether. But when you correlate between your dream, which happened earlier, and when you see that same thing happening later, you say it is a prophetic dream. Now let us assume it is the reverse of it. You saw something and you say same thing in the dream. There you accept it as, why not you say that the waking was a prophetic waking which gave you a real dream? You don't call it that way. It is our mind which is making these issues.
But here it is mentioned that there in dreams that God mind experiences glory. Whatever has been seen, he sees again. Whatever has been heard, he hears again. Whatever has been experienced in different countries and quarters, he experiences again. Whatever has been seen or not seen, heard or not heard, whatever is real or not real, he sees it all. He sees all, himself being all. But prophetic dream is like if we are seeing something in the dream and later on projecting it as a real.
Yeah, projecting as real is not, see, it is the same light which does the projection, what is called Suprakasha or Atma. It is the same light which projects the waking and the dream. So, whether the same thing is projected twice when you dream and later in the waking, we call it as a prophetic dream. That is all what is happening, but ultimately it is all projections. We should understand that. It is that God which is being referred to is the mind there in that mantra of the Upanishad. And it is the same mind which is there in the waking and in the dream. That is why we are able to see the images of the waking in the dream. And why not we have some aspect of a dream which happened earlier appearing when happens really in our waking world. We call it as a prophetic dream. Is something which is the mind is again playing the game. It is not really prophetic in nature is what I have to say. Namaste Prakash.
Namaste, Binduji, Pranam, greetings everyone.
Pranam.
The last time we spoke about Vivartavada and Yugavat Srishtivada. So today I want to add one more to it, which is what Buddha used, or in Buddhist text you see, Pratitya Samutpadavada. So I want to hear your interpretation or how you would place that within this context.
Let me agree. Let me tell my ignorance about Buddhist philosophies. because I have never read Buddhist philosophy, because it has never been, because I always found that they are at the mind level and they have not gone beyond the mind level. So I started reading them in the beginning, but then later I knew that the thing is at the mind level, so I left it, and then that is why I moved on to the Upanishads.
Yeah, the reason I was asking was because in several discussions, people try to compare different teachings, and they seem to come to this conclusion that what Buddha was pointing to and what Vedanta or the Upanishads are inculcating through constant Sravanamana are maybe this kind of what we call Shunya and Purna, all these contradictory states. But somehow I'm finding more and more, because I've worked with the Buddha's methods for a long time. What I'm finding is they are like, there are two essential aspects of this for a beginner, not for a person who is really adept in Upanishads. For a beginner, by simply allowing this to happen, this mental awareness is simply seen as a conditioned state. That's the way I'm perceiving it, and so that's why I asked the question. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah, that's why I said I found that Buddhist teachings are mostly, other than the Zen Buddhism, mostly at the what you call mental level.
Yes. Yeah. But there's a lot of these discussions and various forums where they converge on this, and I think sometimes they misrepresent both the sides.
Quite possible.
Yeah.
Because if you are not really studied the Upanishads, the tendency by reading English translation can misguide you and think that both Buddhist teachings and the English translation, because most of the people who translated or tried to do their own, wordings for Upanishad have studied Buddhism before, especially from the Western world. So other than that, what Gambhiranda and others who have studied the Sampradaya method. So other than that, those books will be really misguiding you if you are not studying the Upanishad from the Sampradaya method, like from those who are Sanskrit scholars. So this is a chance that, they misrepresent the whole thing.
Just I wanted to make a quick point here. Actually, as the little what I have understood Buddhism, it is not necessary it is limited to the mind. I think so there are more to it. Because when they speak of mind, the definition and the way we in Vedanta speaks about the mind is not necessarily the same. So, and specific as well as the self. So, even the emptiness which of the Madhyamika tradition, it is not just many people just interpret it, and even in the tradition also, tradition in the sense like Vedanta tradition as just abhav, but that not necessarily it is so. So Dzogchen and all of those meditation technique in those tradition as well, the Mahamudra tradition, they are looking at when they are speaking of the mind, what they are saying, referring to as the original nature of the mind. So they are not necessarily limiting it to mind itself. Because sometimes what happens is these people just using those terminologies and then they don't look at the definitions per se. I think so this confusion happens. Though I'm not a scholar in any one of them, either Vedanta or in Buddhism, but I think so similar what I am saying, I think a similar thing has been pointed out by Swami Sarvapriyanandaji as well. Obviously he's a far more he knows far better than me obviously. And he also pointed out in some of his talks, I have heard him saying this specifically. There are much similar to Advaita Vedanta and some Tibetan Buddhism schools there are. But it not necessarily gets popularized, because the popular understanding of Buddhism is most comes from the which we call the the Thai Buddhism, or the specifically which comes from the Vishuddha Marga, which is followed mostly in the Myanmar and Sri Lanka. Tibetan Buddhism is also getting popularized, but more for their techniques, less to do with their philosophy per se. But so yeah, I think so. Yeah, that is one thing I just wanted to add.
Yeah, that's why I said, I like the Zen Buddhism, more closer towards Advaita rather than the other schools. But I don't deny your statement that, the Shunyata, what they are talking about is the abhava, or the absence of everything. But they were not able to take it beyond that, because for people to really understand or land upon their own nature, they should know it is as a positive thing. So unless a vastu is real, it can never be grasped or never be vastu means any object. That is why we call that Brahma, this Brahma Vidya is a Vastu Tantra, not a Kartru Tantra. Whereas as a result of meditation you can land there. No. They are all the meditation, the Shravana Manana Nididhyasana will make your mind sharper and sharper and sharper, but ultimately it is the knowledge of your own nature. What the Zen Buddhism also talks about. My matches were with the Advaita. But I'm not, as I said to Prakash, I'm not an expert in Buddhism, so I will restrict myself or refrain myself from making any comments on Buddhism.
No, you are right, Bindoji, in saying that nature, because nature is, I think so, comes up in the literature as Buddha nature. So, it's for example in the Dzogchen as well, where they talk about the tree, where they divides it, the fruit is the Buddha nature. So it is. So that's why I said no, they don't necessarily understand it as an abhav. It is absolute. So they are not either calling it as an asat in Vedantic language, neither they are referring it as an absolute non-existence either. So when they are referring to it, like I'm just quoting one Tibetan Buddhist monk who once came to the clubhouse, and I asked him this specifically. So what is this sunyata? And he gave just one answer which still I remember, and I think it sums it up pretty well. Now I don't have this exact quotation citation from where exactly is there exactly this is how it has been written in the literature or not, or it is something which is his own insight. I do not know, but this is how he. I hope I am audible.
Yeah, you are audible.
Am I audible?
In between the last few words, it
so
gone.
he just summed it up. This thing. I say, what is this Paramartha? And he's.
Yeah,
is it
it's
better now? Is it better? Yeah. So I asked him specifically, what is this Paramarthik Satya of yours, which is you call it Sunyata, and he said that Paramarthik Satya is, I call it specifically, is it absolute non-existence or it is what? He said it is. So when Buddha said the Madhyam Marg, and he said this is actually the philosophical understanding of the Madhyam Marg, that it is in between Madhya, in between the absolute non-existence and Samvriti Satya. So this is what we refer as a Paramarthik Satya. So in that context, it is very difficult to articulate, just like the Nirgun Brahma of Kevala Dvaita, it is impossible to be articulated. Similarly, it seems like that is what he was referring to, but his English is highly accented, so I couldn't follow much of what he said, but this one I clearly, vividly remember.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I was going to ask, should we wrap up?
Yep. I think if there are nobody coming up.
Good. Yeah, thank you so much for spending time with us, Vindaji. We really appreciate it. It means a lot. Just want everybody to know that we do have this Q&A on Advaita on Sundays at this time, starting at 8:30 p.m. IST to join us, and that there is another house called Advaita Vedanta Satsang. And there's a Upanishad class there every Wednesday and Friday at the same time, and we're near the end of the Prashna Upanishad. So we invite everybody to have the benefit of Bindaji teaching on that Upanishad, and then I'm sure we'll move on to other ones. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Bindaji, or should we end?
No, not to me, not from my side. So I presume there are no more questions from anyone, and we'll end the room.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Hari Om.
Thank you. Hari Om. Namaste. Good night.